Next, I'm going to welcome an amazing friend and speaker to the stage. I did my drum roll beforehand there. You see, I did it. Welcome, Oyemade. Hello, hi.
Hello,
So
everyone.
how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. So can you tell us where you're joining from and what time it is for you?
So I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria, and it's about some minutes to 6. Yeah,
Okay.
5:40 to be
Okay. Evening
precise. Yeah,
time.
evening
Yeah.
time. Yes.
And Oyemade, can you introduce yourself and the topic we'll be talking about today?
Sure thing. So thank you one more time for having me. So hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Oyemaja, and I'll be talking about dynamic component architecture today. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a web enthusiast. I'm curious about building for the web, and I currently work as a front-end architect. Yeah. Can we get started?
Beautiful. Yes. Can you tell us what are we covering?
So we'll be talking about something I found really fascinating after working in the Angular community for a while, which I felt was a huge time saver for me. And yeah, I'll just be sharing that with you. It's called dynamic component
Yeah.
architecture. So let me just share my screen so we can get started.
Awesome. I'm going to add your beautiful slide to the screen.
Yes,
And
thank
let
you
you
very
get
much.
started. But thank you again. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. I literally butcher not only names, but like Twitch handles. I am the queen of like butchering your Twitch handles.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, once again. Like, we're going to be talking about dynamic component architecture. But before I go further, I'd just like to introduce myself one more time. I'm a web enthusiast. Currently work as a lead front-end architect. And that's my email address and my GitHub account if you'd like any information from me. Before I move any further, I just want to say a big thank you to Bonnie Brennan, who was actually one of the people who inspired this talk, if I'm being very honest. She shared a dynamic form kind of component with us at an architect training that we attended in Angular Nation. And it was very, very intriguing to me because I was able to know the usefulness of such kind of architecture. And basically, that's the foundation of everything that I'm going to share here today. Um, so after working on the dynamic components Bonnie shared with us, I felt it was it would be of good use to my team to be able to actually treat dynamic other components in our library in such a way so that we could speed up development and make things done faster. And then in the same sense, you're still going to have like the same kind of uniform design across board, which makes it easier for everyone on the team. And apart from that, the fact that you just need to fix an issue in one place or make a modification in one place and everyone gets it is actually a superb feature of this dynamic component architecture. So like I said, cater for custom use cases, you write less code, modularity in your code, are the things that we aim for when writing code. So this is a big advantage of the dynamic functionality. So before I move any further, I would like to say it is also important to note that the main point I'm trying to pass is the thought behind the process, and that the demo I'm showing today was tailored to fit my organization's use case. So let me just start. Let's get into it right away. Yes, so I have a sample Angular application here. Nothing too fancy. Usual app module here where I have three lazy loaded modules. There it is here. So this is the app module here. And here is where I'm lazy loading the dynamic modules. So just so that we can understand what we're dealing with, I would like to just show you what the application looks like in real sense. So before we do that, we actually have to serve our application. And then in Angular, we have a ng command that helps us with that. So you do ng serve, just in case you want to add a port, 8, and then we have a --o flag to make sure it opens in the browser once it's done serving. Hopefully that won't take too much time, and then we can get into it.
Are you using Peacock? Because like I'm loving that purple.
No, I'm not. It's just I just had that.
The purple is everywhere. It's beautiful.
Yes, I'm a big fan of purple. I am a big fan of purple. So here's the application we have, and this is basically what we are trying to build. Here we just have two tables, and where the aim of this talk is to show you how we were able to change these tables from your usual HTML T-head, T-body elements into the dynamic component where you just pass in the headers you want and the data itself, and then it automatically generates the table for you on the fly. So this is what we're trying to achieve. You have a table with headers, and you have a button here that just shows up an alert, shows an alert, and that's it. So basically, in the code, this is what we have. We have a dynamic table module. Yeah, and this is where the module is instantiated. So going through the code, I will go through the static code, the standard way in which we write our everyday HTML tables. Just open that to the side so that we can look at both side by side. And sorry, just asking, is the screen bold enough? Is the text bold enough, or should I increase it?
Sorry, I just realized I was muted. I think you could go one size bigger, or this is fine. Either way. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So yes, like I said, the standard HTML table with a table head element and your table body. And then the way we do it in Angular is you pass in your data. Yeah. Here we just have an array of customers, customer object here. And then we're just prefilling that on the table. So if you come back to the view here, you would see that we have this. So Fit Joy, Benson, Ayobami, Valentine, Raman. This is basically how we would do it normally. So the task at hand was how to take this table and convert it into a standalone component where all we probably just have to do was pass in this data and the headers that we want here, and let the component be in charge of generating this whole table for us, so that then we have less work to do anytime we want to move forward when working with the component. So starting with that, here, this is the dynamic component. Before I do that, let me just give you a sample of how it's being used now. So basically, this is what we have now. This is how the component is being used compared to how each developer would have to use a table before. So you can see that things are a lot better here now. So showing to us how we're able to handle this, we can see this is just the component that we created, and then we're just passing in 4 inputs. We have a title, the data itself that we're trying to display on the table, a couple of settings, formatting settings to just help our table look good, and a buttons input property to know whether or not we want to have buttons on the side of the table. And this is what I'm talking about. So this is the data, settings for the headers, and then buttons to just show whether or not we want buttons there. So inside our dynamic app-dynamic component here, now app.dynamic table, so there's no need to be scared about. It's just mostly comments so that when I share it, everyone can understand what I'm talking about. So here we are expecting the inputs I earlier showed us. Yeah, the title, the records, the settings, and the buttons. We pass them in as inputs into this component, and then based on that, we automatically generate settings for you that you also passed in. And just so that we understand what the settings look like, I'll just open the model file so that we can actually just go through that. So basically, we are passing in a title, which is just what shows up here. So this is this instance of the dynamic table. You can see there's not much difference, but the main difference is when you're developing and then when you just have to just call the component and pass in the data. But I would also like to show you that with this format we have here, we could actually do more things faster compared to how you would do them with the normal table. So here we have the title here, which represents this customers. we have the record itself, which is data that is showing on the grid here. Then we're passing in something called table settings. So basically table settings, and this is the model here, just so we can go through it. It's just of type column settings. And basically what we are doing is we want to know the primary key, the header, and the format. I'll come back to the format later, but let's just put our eyes on the primary key and the header. So basically what this primary key and header is just trying to let us know that for each row of data that you are trying to show on the table, give us the key that binds that data to it, and then the header that you want to show. So for a column settings, like let's use this guy for example. So now an example. So for a column settings, yes, for the first column settings, we have a primary key name that shows the code, the data itself that we are binding to on that object property, and the header full name. So you'll see that if we go to the table here, we have the full name. And if you check in the data here, you'll see that this Fitzjoy is actually bound to the name here. So basically that's what you just have to pass through to be able to show that data. Additionally, we have something called buttons here. Now on buttons here, basically what we're just trying to do is, and again, this is actually a special use case that was for my organization, but actually applies to a lot of other people too. Some tables have buttons, some don't have buttons. But here, we wanted buttons, and we also wanted to make that functionality not necessarily compulsory, so that if you wanted to pass in buttons, you could, and if there were no buttons, if you left it empty, you would also have a good table. So here we are passing in just a single button. Our component is smart enough to know that if there are more than one items in this array, it will create multiple buttons. And how we are able to do that is just simply here. In the dynamic table component itself, we have a block of code here that just helps us know whether or not you have settings. So this is it here. We are passing in the buttons here. First thing we're doing is we want to know whether you have one or more buttons. If you have more than one button, obviously we want the text here to be different, to be plural, because you have more than one button. But if you have just one button, action is enough. So we'll now take that button itself that you passed in. This is here where we are setting the text that we created here for the actions. And then we take the buttons you have and we loop through them. And then based on that, we dynamically create HTML buttons here on your table. So that's how that works. So a special feature here, that's how we're able to have this. A special feature on this button is you also want this button to be able to carry out a functionality on behalf of this row. So basically, this button that is in a separate component has to have an idea of what data is on this row and how to take advantage of that data. So in this example we have here, if you click on open, you can see that it shows the particular customer's name, shows how much he spent, the email and the phone number. You click on this one here, Ramana fees, the email and everything. So in order to achieve this functionality, we needed to create a kind of table where we were able to access the data that we needed. We were able to do this by actually knowing beforehand what data we actually need for that button. So in this case here, we needed the name to show the name of the row that was clicked, the total spent, the email, and the phone. And then we also have a function that actually fires. So basically, you already have your function that you are putting into that button beforehand, and then you are putting it into that dynamic component, and the dynamic component is able to fire that function for you. A little more detail on how that functionality works. Basically, in the dynamic component here, we have a click handler here. And what this function does is that it takes in the particular record, so the line, the data on that row, the function that was imputed, the function that you created on the model, and then the values. Basically, values are the parameters that you align here. So basically, these are the values. So it takes that and then it fires the function by spreading those values and mapping them to the record. So for example, if you have a name here now, it will spread your name, the name attributes, the name property, and then bind it to the name value that is on this record. That way you have access to the name inside this place here. So that was how we were able to achieve. Yes. Thank you. Another interesting fact, another interesting aspect of the table we have here is actually concerning this this feature here, where you are able to format how you represent your data on the table. So basically, we have if you look at the customer's data, you can see that for the loyalty reward, we have a true or false value. But here we are able to format the data and say yes, no, to make it give it better user experience. We were able to do this by taking advantage of Angular directives. So basically here, I have a directive here, and this is where I'm binding it to, yeah. So this is where I am binding the directive to, yeah. And I am passing in the record primary key. So basically primary key represents the property name, and I'm also passing in that particular record's primary key itself. So basically in this case of the first customer here, we will have something like Faith Joy, the text itself, and then the name property itself, so that we can have access to that inside the directive. So in the directive, you don't really have to do much. You just have to check for your primary key here. If you get it, you call in renderer2, and then you just manipulate the native elements based on what you want. So in our case here, we have true or false, and then we're saying if it's a true, show yes and give it a color of green. If it's a false value, give it a color of yellow, and then change the text to no. And that's how you're able to achieve this for each individual item on the table. The last interesting part that was really fascinating about the table was being able to use pipes. Now, as you can all see here, because the HTML is in a separate file, you'll probably be wondering how you're able to then implement different type of pipes, because if you can check here, we have a pipe here for currency. If I just do this here, format this, so that we can have access to the settings on the second table. You will see that this date now has automatically been formatted. So the table, our table is smart enough to know when you need to use a date pipe or a currency pipe. So we're able to achieve this by using a custom pipe that now acted as a pipe that takes in a value, an argument, and then gives you the type of pipe you want basically on that data. So firstly, it starts by creating a pipe called format cell. And then we bind that format cell pipe to our HTML over here. Yes, this is it. Sorry. Yeah, okay, this is it. And then we take in an argument called map.format now. So like I was saying earlier, map.format is another property that is optional that you can pass into your custom settings. And then on map.format, you can then pass in the kind of pipe you want to take effect on this particular primary key. So in our customer value here, all of these guys don't have pipes, but if you look at the customer, the settings for this particular customer table, customer table setting, you see that in the pipe for the format here, we have a pipe format of currency. And for those who are wondering, this is actually an enum value. So basically our pipe format is of type enum, and then you can just create, this is it here. So default currency, you can add as much as you want, but just make sure that you know that for each individual line, it starts from 0, and then this represents 1, 2, 3, and so on. So for what we do inside our pipe format is that we just do a check. This is just a default check here that just handles objects and arrays in case they come as result values on the table. And then here we check if the pipe format is 1. So if it's the currency pipe that you want to take effect on your data, if you pass in the currency type, the pipe format of currency would then transform your data into a text that is taking advantage of the currency pipe here. And how we're able to do this is by actually getting the currency pipe itself from the Angular core here, from the common file, Angular directory, and then using it directly in our component file. So this is something people are not really aware of. You can also take advantage of inbuilt pipes by Angular in the components here. And that's how we're
This
able to
is
do
like
this. So for,
so cool. And it's like,
yes.
I don't know, it's like the next level of pipes. Like, whoa.
Yeah, so a pipe that dictates the kind of pipe you want. So pipe of pipes kind of thing. Yeah, so that's how we're able to take advantage of the pipe and then format the data regardless of how, by just passing in the pipes that we want. So you can see that instead of having a normal text, yeah, it has been able to add the currency and then show you the amount that you have here. And that's how the same thing that applies to the dates on this side here. And that. So there's I think this is also a percentage pipe here. Yeah, this is a percentage pipe here too. And that's how we're able to achieve that. One more thing concerning this is actually that we actually added a small functionality here. So if you look into this code, you can see that there's a little bit of validation going in. So just in case you don't pass in any settings, we just wanted to be able to still make the table look relatively good. Just if you pass, in case you just passed in the data and probably the title or something, which is why at first I had this commented out. So just to give you a sneak peek. So without passing in any settings, just the record itself, the component is still smart enough to be able to format it to some extent. You can see that we no longer have the pipe support and that, and yeah, we no longer have the pipe support and some other things, but the component is still smart enough to be able to use that data you have to be able to render something on the screen. And basically what the key to that is just being able to loop through the primary key that we already have and then just capitalize the first text. And that's why we have this on the table here. That's how we have this. So that's it for the reusable table. Yeah, another interesting part, which I think was probably one of the most fun ones too, was because of how hard it was to work with something of this kind of thing, was probably pop-ups. So you're all aware of
Oh.
pop-ups. Yeah, pop-ups. Pop-ups to me were a bit of a seriously, because I think when I started out with Angular, I was stuck on Bootstrap models. So using jQuery and then having to use jQuery to manipulate. But after having a couple of talks with Sander, I saw that he was just able to use CSS for pop-ups, and I thought that was really, really wonderful. I was amazed at how he was able to do that. And then we now took that being able to use CSS to another level where you can have a scene. And let me just show that to you guys here so that you can.
Yes, we want to see. We want to
Yes.
see.
Let me show that to you guys here. It's a dynamic model. So this is how it is being used. Yes. So basically, you have a dynamic model here, and this dynamic model can serve as different types of models. So in the illustration I have here, we have a model that pops up from the right. If you cancel this, you have a model that shows this same component is the one rendering the same model, and it shows up here. You also have a model that is a confirmation. So basically the difference between these two is one is a kind of primary button where you are able to inject content. And this one is basically, are you sure whether or not you want it? But these are the three types of models that we had in our organization. And then being able to dynamically use CSS to change what the component looked like was very, very fascinating to us. So majorly here, as you can see on the screen, we just have three buttons here. And these three buttons show and hide this component. And that's basically what it does. If we go into this app dynamic model here so that I can just have a look at how it works. Let's click this here and then let's click on the dynamic model itself. Yeah. So this is just all we have here. Here we just have a modal type. So basically this is what does the main work. The main difference between all the modals you just saw is the CSS behind it. Let me just see whether I can show you what the CSS file looks like. So this is SCSS, and basically these are the main differences between all of them. So this is primary, confirmation, and right side. So based on the type of CSS, that's how we are able to manipulate the kind of model you have, and then using ngIf to be able to show and hide those models. And being able to transition from having to use Bootstrap and jQuery to just something like this was really, really made us really happy and excited. Yeah, it was really, really good. So yeah, in the model itself, we just have I think let me just show you what the model looks like again. If it's a right side model, we inject content into this. So let me open the TypeScript so now you can go through it. Yeah, so you have the inputs. We are imputing a couple of things here. So modal type, and if you can look at this comment here, there are 3 types of modal we design. And this is not limited to just these 3. These are just the 3 that we needed. You can go crazy, put it on the left side, on the right side, top, bottom, anywhere you want. Just modifying the CSS alone gets you the kind of model you want. We have the right side and we have the confirmation. So we also pass in a header property. So basically a header is what shows up here. This is the header itself. Another requirement for us was a subheader. So this is the subheader here. Dynamic model action. So one thing about pop-ups is that you can only have access to the data of the pop-up to a particular extent. So basically, if you're creating something like a dynamic model, you still want the person using the component to be in charge of what is actually going to show up inside the model. And that was where ng content came into play and made it really easy. So basically, after instantiating the dynamic model here with the properties, you can add whatever you want. Here we can just add something like a h4. Display. It's cool. Basically, if you open it, that also gets shown inside the model. So basically, you are in charge of everything that shows from after the subheader to the end of the to the start of the buttons. You are in charge. You can inject content into that particular component. So another thing here that was optional was button text. If you wanted to show what kind of button text you want to show. So in this case here, we are using submit, but we also wanted the developers using the component to be in charge of the text that shows up for the button. And then we have a disabled property to dynamically disable the property to make sure you meet a particular criteria before you can then have access to the submit button or not. And lastly, we have 2 event emitters here to be able to pass back events to the parent component to let them know which of the buttons was clicked so that they can prepare for it when they're using the component. And that's how we have this. So if you look at this place here, basically the click handler on one of our buttons is going to show this. And then when the cancel button is clicked, we are telling this particular parent component to change this show modal property to false. And that's why you can see that anytime you click on cancel, it takes out the component. Show, cancel, it takes it out. So for the submit button itself, we binded it here to just a console.log inside this particular component. So for every time you click on the submit button, so I can just show you my console here. Yeah. So if you look at any time, so you definitely have access to the submit button too. So that's how we're able to get that done. Yes. Thank you very much.
Seriously, you should rename this talk to fanciness in Angular. like the fanciest way you could do anything. That's fanciness with Oyemade.
Yes.
This was beautiful. I love this so much. So, can people find the? I see you have your GitHub here. Can people find the code to just poke around and explore?
Yeah. So it's available on my GitHub repo. I think it's called ng sandbox. So I have other things there too relating to other things. The only experience I carry on Angular inside that. So the other things that, so they have access to it.
I feel so blessed to have met you and to just get to be a part of events that you're a part of. I hope that we get to cross paths whenever people start traveling again, because you've just been awesome and you're incredible and such a good speaker. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming on this stream and presenting your content. It was beautiful.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Big thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you. Have a wonderful day. We're going to welcome our next streamer. That was awesome. And yes, Ivana's saying the minions on the background. They were shout out to the minions.